Process can be such a bore. But guess what? Understanding your process is one of the most powerful and important things you can do to scale your business. The reason is, while the content of every deal is different, the process is virtually the same. Once you understand your process, you can start to automate many of the redundant tasks and outsource many others. The net result is your business starts to run like, well, a business. Much of the busy work is lifted off your shoulders, leaving you time to focus on strategy, deals, partnerships, financing, and other activities suitable to your role as an entrepreneur. So join Dave and I today as we dive deep into the fourth skill you need to build: process.
Hey, welcome to the Land.MBA podcast. My name is David Van Steenkist. I am here with my co-host, Mr. Howard Zonder.
Hello, everybody.
What's going on today, brother?
Another day in paradise.
All right. You got to come up with...
We just got done with our bomb cyclone here in the Northeast.
How'd that go?
It was 3 days of wind and tons of rain, and my garage flooded, and the normal stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
All good.
Yeah. You got to come up with a new line on that. Every single podcast is the same.
What do you mean?
It's always the same
cyclone?
answer. No, it's always the same answer, and then we talk about the weather.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it was an extreme event, so justified.
All right, we'll let you off the hook this time.
Thanks.
Cool. Hey, so we are talking about today skill number 4 of 5, the skills that pay the bills in the land business, and this one is process.
I love process.
Yeah, you're such a geek.
I always think about stuff like that. It's like, when I was in high school, was I thinking, God, someday I'm going to be all about process. That's going to be so exciting.
I'm going to be a senior process engineer someday.
I just wanted to be a rock star, to be honest with you.
That sounds better.
Yeah, it sure does. Somehow I missed the mark on that.
Oh, well, hopefully one of our lineages will be doing that. My I don't know if I've told everybody, my kid is a bit of a rock star, and she's going to audition for American Idol tonight. So we are kind of excited.
That is so cool. And I've had the privilege of hearing her live, and I can vouch for you that she is truly gifted. She's amazing.
So I will pitch her again right now. If anybody wants to listen to her stuff, go to renvan.com, WRENN, van.com. So
I remember,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you sent me the well-produced version of one of the songs she wrote, and I think I listened to it about 50 times in a row. I mean, it was just that good.
I listen to it all the time too, and I'm her dad, so it's pretty. I love that song. So hopefully, maybe it'll be a hit one of these days when she gets it out there. So, yeah. All right. So we are talking about processes in the land business, and tell us about that a little bit, Howard. Give us a little intro as to what is process and why do we need it in any business, much less this business.
Yeah, on any discussion, I always like to start out, why do we even care? Because if we don't care, nothing else really matters. And so why should people care about process in their business? It really comes down to this phrase, which is kind of core to how I run things. And I just think it's just a good phrase for all entrepreneurs. And that is, if you want to make big money, you have to solve big problems. So therefore, the goal of the entrepreneur is to automate everything they can automate. Everything can't be automated. So what you can't automate, you try to outsource in the most efficient way possible. But really what you're trying to do is build a machine that takes care of all of the little stuff almost on automatic pilot, so that you as the entrepreneur can preserve your precious time to focus on the most strategic issues and big deal making. That's how you make money. That's how you change the world. Is if you're and it really happened. I mean, when I started the business, I was like so many people. I was mailing out of my house, and my friend who is a serial entrepreneur, he said this to me. He said, "Howard, you're an idiot." I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, if you want to make big money, you have to solve big problems. And you can't solve big problems if you're wasting all your time solving little administrative problems like how to get mail out the door. You
Yeah.
automate it or you outsource it, but you don't do it. And that was sort of a big aha moment for me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to automate and outsource everything.
Exactly. Exactly. And oh, what's the book we need to plug here? I'm trying to think of the book, which talks about process. Very, very famous one. It'll come to me, but
Okay.
it was a good point to stick it in there. But we'll stick it in later.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, the E-Myth.
Right. Great book. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Well, because just to tag on to what you just said as well, guys, you know, when we get into scaling our business, when we get into starting to first, you know, we start developing these processes, and then as we optimize them, we eliminate things. So before we can automate and delegate, and we're going to talk more about this a little bit. And we did a podcast a while back where we reviewed the Tim Ferriss eliminate, automate, delegate. And we added one more. We coined a word, optimate, or that's optimization. So it's a never-ending cycle, and we'll talk about the Kaizen part later, which is continuous improvement. But if you are not creating your processes, then if you are starting to use virtual assistants, if you're hiring people, then you need these processes to help train. So not only what Howard's talking about, so you can use your time to do the most valuable things that your time is to be used for, and you're not, you know, slaving over task-oriented things all the time. When you outsource and when you automate, if you don't have these processes documented, then you're not going to be able. Then you don't have a business. You just have a hobby that maybe makes you some money, but when you figure out your per hour rate, it ain't making you as much money as you think. So let's continue on. So tell us, what is a process, Howard?
So definitionally, you know, the process is a series of interlinked steps which are assigned to every stakeholder within a specific work environment to deliver the product or service to the customer. Very formal, you know, blah, 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 blah. But it really is just a set of activities that are done in a certain way over time in order to be able to deliver. Here's the important thing. Whether you think you have a process or you don't think you have a process, whether you've actually consciously thought about your process or you've never consciously thought about your process, you have a process. Everybody has a process. The business has a process. It may not be an efficient process, but you've got one. And it just kind of may have just percolated organically just by the way you've done things. But until you sort of analyze it and map it, you don't really understand it. But it's there in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And it is a series of steps that you follow in order to get through the business. So let's just speak at the highest level. You could divide the land investing business into two pieces. The first part is the acquisition of properties. The second part is the disposition of properties or the sale of properties. So we've now taken our business and we've divided it into two interlocked steps. That is a process. And then you could take each one of those interlock steps and you can break them down further and think about what you're doing. Oh, well, you know, I pick a county, I get a list, I price the list, I do due diligence, I close, and blah, 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 blah. All of that happens in a certain way, in a certain order. And if you stop and think about it and write it down and map it out, you've got a process, even if you haven't thought about it in that way in the past. So what we're going to talk about is some processes that you can use to map these things out and to understand it and to improve them over time.
These are some crazy times in the real estate field. Demand is high, inventory's low. If you're a realtor, a wholesaler, or house flipper, you've probably noticed how hard it's become to find quality deals. This is why so many in our industry are looking at land as an outstanding way to add new revenue stream to their portfolio.
If you're listening to this podcast, you already know that land is a relatively unknown niche of the multi-billion-dollar real estate market with huge profit potential. Seriously, what other business delivers 200, 300, 1,000% return on investment deal after deal?
It seems hard to believe, but land really returns 100 to 300% commonly, and sometimes over 1,000% deal after deal. And in the age of COVID, demand for land has never been higher.
Many of our students have already created new revenue streams with land and added 6 figures to their incomes.
We've had clients who have achieved multiple 6 figures in their first year of business. Another paid for all his coaching and pocketed 15 grand on his first deal. Now, not everybody has these kinds of results, but they're certainly possible if you have the right instruction, the right support, and highly experienced mentors.
You don't need another course that promises the moon and then delivers an elementary school education. You need a proven program suitable to your experience and ambition. You need a LandMBA. The LandMBA is everything you need to blow it out in the land business. Courseware, mentorship, tools, community, and even deal funding. Look, because you're here listening to me, you know that Dave and I don't hold anything back. That's a founding principle we've had from the beginning. With the LandMBA, you get everything we have to offer. There are no upsells. And now, through popular demand, we have transformed our highly regarded one-to-one coaching program into a small group format at a fraction of the price. If you're ready to build a 6-figure income with the freedom of being your own boss, go right now to www.land.mba/fortune. That's www.land.mba/fortune. Let us help you create your next path to wealth.
Very good. So developing those processes, obviously, I think one of the first steps to developing this process, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit and go a little bit into detail on some of the high level steps? Get into some detail, like, what's included. So if we just go in order, the first is, we've got county selection, area selection, and then we've got the mailing process. And I think the area selection is pretty obvious as to what that is, but let's talk about the mailing process, because the way that we map it out, there are several sub processes within that process. We've got, obviously, once our mail is out the door, we first of all, there's a process. And this first step is obviously the lifeblood of the business. Once you've selected your area, decided where you're going to mail, and that's actually preparing the mailer, getting your data downloaded, formatted, and then pricing it. And that seems to be, that's a whole podcast by itself, because that, out of everybody I talk to, that seems to be everybody's big issue, that is the hardest part to outsource, because there's always nuances every time you do it. And in my opinion, that being the very most important part of the business. And yeah, it is not impossible, but definitely difficult to outsource. Certainly not going to outsource that to a low-level VA. Might be a very high-level VA or a partner or something. And that's our biggest, in my business, that's my biggest roadblock. That's my biggest cog in the wheel, because that still requires me to do. And so I try to get as much else outsourced and automated as I can, so that that very important task in the business, which to me still feels like busy work, but I try to make that my only busy work in the business. But then, of course, the mail flies, and then we've got to have a process for handling those leads, whether it be through, coming in through the phone or through email or snail mail, etc. We've got that process. So there's a step in there where we've got to look at and evaluate the property, and then, call and negotiate with sellers. And those are all process oriented. You've got to have a basic script that you're going to go off of, certain questions you need to ask the seller, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to dive too deeply into that because we'll be here all day. But I think for most of us, especially when we're starting, a lot of that is in our head with a few notes. And, when you want to get to a point where you have, let's say, an acquisitions manager who's doing that negotiating for you, especially if you're working a full-time job, that's one of the first things that I would try to outsource. But you've got to develop that process yourself first and really own it, know it, tweak it, optimize it, and have it really set in stone before you outsource it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've always admired about your business and the way you run it, Dave, is that you are a tweaker. And I mean that in every connotation of the word. But you never just
wait a minute, that's the doorbell. It's my dealer, excuse me.
You just never relax. You never just sort of say, you know what, I'm just sending the letter out. I send the letters out over and over and over. You'll sit there and you're like, yeah, let me try a different letter. You'll test things. So whether it's the letter that you're using, or maybe it's when somebody calls back from the letter, maybe you've tried going to Pat Live, and then you said, oh, I didn't like that, so I'm going to have it go to an intake manager. Whatever you're doing, you never just say, oh, well, I'm doing it, that's how I do it. You do it, you evaluate it, and you say, maybe there's, I'm going to take a look at this part of the process. I'm going to see if there's a better way to do it.
Would that be like killing the stupid rule?
Well, that's sort of one part of it.
Right.
Whoops. When I started LandSpeed, the first thing I didn't do it to create a business. I just did it for my own land business originally. And the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to automate the mailing process. And then once I did that and I liked it, that's when I said, well, let me see what else I can do. So I did something what we call a process map, and I process mapped the whole business. And these are frameworks, so somebody else might have a slightly different map that they create, but this is the one I created, and I think it should resonate with most people that have spent some time in the business. So the way I do it, there are 9 steps. So step 1 is we select a county. Step 2 is we get a list of vacant land for that county. Step 3 is we scrub and we price that list, prepare it for mailing. Step 4 is we mail. Step 5 is we're going to do due diligence on opportunities that come in from those mailings. Of those that pass due diligence, we go to step 6, which is closing on the acquisition. Once we've got the property, step 7 is we market the property. Step 8 is we sell the property. And step 9 is, in some cases, we default on the property. So the way I look at it at a high level, there are 9 steps in the business. And there are all kinds of activities that happen within each one of those high-level steps, which would be sub-processes. And so once we do that, now I can break it down into smaller chunks, and I can look at sub-processes and say, all right, how am I doing that? Is that the best way to do it? Whenever I look at a process, the devil is in the details, right? And the way I do it is not necessarily the way Dave does it or somebody else should do it. We might have ultimately develop slightly different processes, even if at a high level they're similar. And as you build your team and as you gain experience, you're going to figure out the process that's unique to your business. But as I said, whether you think you have one or not, you have a process. So develop a process map. So what are you doing in order? And then what I do is I look at it and say, okay, I want to automate everything I can automate because that's the most cheapest, most efficient way to do it, and least prone. I should say least prone to error. It's kind of least prone to error unless you have an error in your data, in which case it can actually compound an error. So make sure your data is good.
Right.
And then you're gonna be left with things that can't be automated. There are a lot of things that can't be automated. And of those, you're going to break those down into two different groupings. The first group are things that you think are strategic that you don't want to outsource. You want to do it yourself because it's strategic to the business. Or some things that you just want to do. You like to do it, you're good at it, and you want to do it. And then there's everything else, which you don't want to do. And that's what you're going to try to outsource. And then, you'll build a team around that. Hopefully you'll build a team with various specializations and expertise. The goal is always to give any piece of work to the person who has the combination of they're the cheapest and most competent at it. So if you're going to do something very task oriented, you can pass that along to a $4 VA overseas. If you're doing something that requires business judgment, you might say, well, that's either going to be a very expensive VA or maybe I'm going to hire somebody to do that. But you figure it out. That's part of the process decision.
Right.
And then you allocate those tasks.
Yeah. And that could also, a great example of that for getting, let's say the best bang for your buck is, let's say in sales. For example, if you're doing deals that are in the price point where you can use realtor for all your sales. I know a lot of people who are doing that. And so now you're getting for sure the best bang for your buck because maybe not at the end of the day. You don't have somebody that you're paying hourly, whether they sell or not. It's 100% commission. So, you're still going to pay that nice chunk of commission at the end of the day. But, if you want to keep your cash flow safe and secure and only pay out when you make a profit on a deal, then using a realtor is a great way it's just one example. There's many facets of the business for that. And in fact, you can pay you can use a combination payment, let's say on an intake manager. Intake manager is doing a lot of stuff. Hey, if you didn't have that intake manager making the deal on the front end, you wouldn't have anything on the back end to do. So I know that a lot of people will pay a base to their intake manager or acquisition manager, and then pay a bonus, can't really call it a commission, upon the sale of the property. So that's something to think about out there as well. If you're thinking about ways to compensate an intake manager and keep your cash flow, minimize the impact on your cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go from I do it all myself to I outsource everything in one fell swoop. Once you have a process map, then you can say, all right, these are the areas that I want to outsource. And you can prioritize them and say, all right, this is the one I hate doing the most. I like doing everything myself first until I just absolutely want to kill myself if I do it again. Because that also forces me to figure out how to make it as efficient as possible. I can be anal like that. I like to have a process to reduce complicated things down to a task level if I can. That's by the numbers. Do it. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I can do that, I can send that to a more inexpensive resource because it's now task oriented instead of judgment based. But once I've worked out what I think is much inefficiency out of that process as I can, then I'll go to outsource it. But I don't outsource everything at once. I take it one at a time. I put it out there. I train somebody. Once they're doing well and I feel that they can act independently, then I'm looking at my process map and I'm saying, all right, what's the next thing I can outsource? And maybe I can give it to the same VA, or maybe I have to give it to a different VA because it's a different skill set, whatever it is. But it all starts with the process map. So I know what has to be done and I can just start ticking things off.
Yeah. And that process of outsourcing doesn't stop at, okay, this is ready to outsource it. There's a process for outsourcing, for interviewing that person, for hiring that person, for their probationary period, their training, the follow-up on their training. And you got to own it. You're the entrepreneur. It's your responsibility. I see so many people out there that talk about, oh, this VA sucked, or this VA service sucked, or this may be true sometimes, but most of the time, we should be pointing fingers back at ourselves because we failed in some part of the process. Now, if all that was good and that person still didn't work out, then okay, that's the person. But guess what? Now you've got a process built to train and onboard and hire by. So now it shouldn't take as much of your time, because at least you can have them study the process map and the to-dos, videos with that, and makes your onboarding process much easier and systematized.
We had a saying in the Marine Corps: you can delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility. And that was sort of an organizational rule in the Corps. And in an entrepreneurial business, it's just a fact. It doesn't matter who you blame. It's going to affect your bottom line. So you better take responsibility for it.
Right. But you know what? You brought up a very, very good point on managing people, on outsourcing. Don't want to go too deep down the rabbit trail, but something that always upset me when I was in the corporate world was when it happened to me, or I saw managers do it to others, where they would give them more and more responsibility, but not authority equal to their responsibility. And I try not to manage that way. If I'm going to give someone a certain level of responsibility, then I want to give them some decision-making levity and authority that are equivalent to that level of responsibility. You don't want to be pulling the rug out from people, because you'll frustrate the hell out of them. So if you're going to outsource, truly outsource and be a good manager.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So once you've figured out what your process map is, and you've automated what you can automate, and you've outsourced what you can outsource, and the business is running pretty decently, what do you think, Dave? Are we done? Have we achieved the task?
Right off into the sunset, baby. There's a beach with your name on it.
That's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely. Well, certainly if you're making enough money, and
I'm going to the south of France myself.
Then you just hire, a really, really good person, pay them really well to just run your business. We would all like to get to that point. I'm certainly not there yet. But no, we're not there yet.
We're never there. Do we ever get there?
Hey, folks, people often talk about automating and outsourcing your land flipping business, but what does that really mean? Generic solutions leave it to you to figure out how to set up and maintain the automations. I've been running my land business on LandSpeed for over 3 years because it's a total solution and allows me to focus on being a great land investor. LandSpeed was built specifically for land investing by a land investor. And with many of the most successful people in the business using it for years, it's evolved into one of the most feature-rich solutions on the market. Some of the key benefits I get are being able to create and manage mail campaigns and neighbor letters. I'm able to automate tasks amongst my team, create contracts and deeds, and email, text, or mail them within a few clicks. I can automatically capture sales leads from any lead source, including Facebook Messenger. Then it automatically pushes those leads into my sales funnel so that I can manually follow up, but they also go into my automated drip campaign. And since LandSpeed's a total cloud-based solution, I can run my business from anywhere in the world with a phone, laptop, or tablet. So if you want to turn your hobby into a professional, scalable business, just go to landspeedtech.com/Dave to receive a $150 discount today.
No, I mean, do we ever get to where it's perfect? No, because things change. People leave. But there's something that's called continuous improvement, the Kaizen.
Yeah.
So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a Japanese term, and it's very powerful. That's exactly what it means, continuous improvement. One of the most compelling examples of this was not related to the land business. My one of my best friends was the battalion surgeon during the Battle of Fallujah, and won big time medals and awards for heroism and all that kind of stuff. Because when the battle started, he moved the operating room into the heart of the battle and was literally calling out snipers to Marines as he was operating on them. And he won medals for saving probably 30 people on the first day of the battle that would have otherwise died had he not made that decision. Well, anyway, as I was reading his book, because he's got a book about it, and as time went on, things settled down, and he had his corpsmen, and it was just nonstop Kaizen. It was, all right, this is the operating room we set up when the battle started. Now we've got some time and we've got more locations to choose from. Let's find the best place to put it. Let's clean things up. Let's improve. Let's look at our processes. How can we be more efficient in how we treat wounded Marines? It was every single day. It wasn't okay resting on our laurels. We had some success. We can relax now. It was constant improvement in that situation, and that's where ultimate success comes from, whether you're in the military situation or in a business situation. So there are a couple things that my team used to do when I was in the corporate world. And the first thing is we would always ask ourselves, what are our sacred cows? And you have to stop and think about this. There's a great book, one of the classic books on behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. And it was groundbreaking research. And we basically said is that human beings, there are some things that when he says thinking fast, it means we just act based upon our understanding of having been through that situation many times. So we don't think about it, we just react. You can think about that when you're driving. You don't, when you go to make a left-hand turn when you're driving, you don't think, okay, I'm going to look in my rear view mirrors, and then I'm going to put my foot on the brake, and then I'm going to turn my turn signal, and then I'm going to look back into the mirrors, and then I'm going to slow down, and then I'm going to turn my steering wheel. No, you just do it, right? That's thinking fast, because after a while, it's just, it's subconscious how you do those things. Other things are thinking slow. And that's where you actually have to think through the process because you don't have enough experience with it. And it's hard work and it takes a lot of energy. We would not make it as human beings if we did everything thinking slow. We have to think fast on a lot of things. Well, as we go through our business life, there are some processes that become embedded, sort of like making a left-hand turn in the car. And we don't think about them. We just do them over and over and over again because, well, we've always done it that way. But does that mean it's the right thing to do? No, it doesn't. And as David said, sometimes the environment changes, macro situations change that, and you think, I've been doing this nonstop for a couple of years now, and I'm trying to remember why we put that in place. And I can't quite remember why we started doing that. and all of a sudden you look at it, you're like, maybe I should take a look at it and see if it's still necessary.
Right.
We have to stop ourselves and force ourselves into that mentality of let me look at the process and look at a thing that I do regularly and spend time and energy on. Does it still matter? Those are sacred cows, and we need to slay sacred cows. We need to excise them from our business life.
Yes. I can think of a lot of I used to be I owned part of a company where we designed and manufactured industrial inkjet printers. And so we had the most critical component. It was a very expensive component in these industrial printers that we bought from a third-party vendor was the print head. And it was only one source for it. And they went through our vendor went through a pretty serious manufacturing quality problem. And so we were getting a lot of service issues in the field because our process for bringing these in, I mean, they were all tested, ready to go. We shouldn't have to put ink in them and test print them and everything with the printer. We would just take the boxes, throw it in with the printer and ship it. And so we went, that it was such a serious issue and it was costing us money to go out to fix stuff in the field. We had to go to 100% testing. And so we unbox these things, put ink in them, and which is like, kind of once you put ink in them, it's a whole nother process if you got an issue. And tested them all. And it was really costly and time consuming. Well, our vendor fixed their problem and the quality went better, but we just kept that sacred cow going because, well, you can't be too sure. We kept it going for like a long time. And, so those things might happen. You might have somebody that screws up your due diligence or a VA that, screws something up. And then, so now you take the precaution to fully double check all that work to the point of where you could have almost done it yourself. Right. And so we're going to go through peaks and valleys where things change and we have to adapt and improvise. But if we install a new methodology to fix a problem, part of our optimization, our Kaizen is like, oh, you know what? We can remove that now.
Yeah, exactly. We had a little process in my when I was in my last corporate job, and we called it "Kill the Stupid Rule." And once a month, in one of our meetings, we would get together, and part of that agenda was kill the stupid rule. And people would recommend rules to be killed, and then we would, as a group, we would kind of say, all right, which one is the one that's completely unnecessary, wasting the most time, and then that's the one once a month we'd kill a stupid rule. Now, here's the important thing to think about. A lot of times in the land business, our organization is us and some overseas VAs. Asian culture is different than Western culture, and Asian culture is they're not is likely to speak out and say this is a stupid rule because that would be considered inappropriate and disrespectful to the leader. They got more of a Confucian way of looking at things. And so one of the easier ways to get this information is to be in a team because we can't think of everything. And sometimes it's the people doing the work that recognize that it's a stupid rule. So you really have to work with your people and build a level of trust and willingness to communicate on their part so that you can surface those opportunities to improve things and get them engaged in your process. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe part of their job is to help you refine that part of the process because it may not happen automatically.
Absolutely.
All right. So Kaizen, continuous improvement. And the thing I liked about Kill the Stupid Rule is that, we would just put it on the agenda once a month. And that's how you do it. I mean, if you don't put it on an agenda once a month, you're not going to stop and like I said, and think about those things that happen, because you're thinking fast and it's just ingrained and, I got bigger problems to fry. That's what I do every month. I don't think about it. You've got to stop yourself and you've got to force yourself to think of those things. And then putting it on an agenda once a month is good. Just the way you would review your books and things like that.
Yeah. And I mean, once a month is great for killing the stupid rule, but actually thinking about it, if you're only thinking about it once a month, that once a month isn't going to be very productive. Mm-hmm. I'm not good at executing this yet, but I actually have it on my calendar as a daily routine to review processes for 10, 15 minutes and just look at stuff for process optimization. Now, I don't do it. I do it maybe, I do it sort of more ad hoc. Even though it's on my calendar, I tend to ignore it.
You do it more than most people I know. And I'll give a great example. I mean, we send out, what do we do? When we send out our mailers, what are we sending out? If it's a blind officer, we're sending out a purchase agreement. Our goal is to get that purchase agreement signed.
Yeah.
You figured out, working with your title companies, that if they simply cross out a number, put a new number in there, put their initial on it, take a picture of it on their phone and email it to you, that's enough to get the process rolling to set up escrow and get things going with the title company.
Yeah.
That's a huge process improvement right there. It makes everybody's life a whole lot simpler.
Yeah, let's just talk about that for a second, because this is going a little bit off subject, but it's part of it's a very important process. In today's more competitive world, with a lot more people sending offers out, time is really important. Speed of execution is really important. When somebody signs that piece of paper, there's just a psychological commitment with most people. They get another offer in the mail while you're still in due diligence and processing things. Some will still try to go around you and screw you if they get a better deal. But a lot of people, most people probably are going to be like, well, no, I accepted this offer. I've signed it. Many times in the negotiations that, you've sent them an offer, and you've negotiated a slightly different price. So now they're like, well, send me a revised offer. Well, my team we've got a very optimized process set up in the LandSpeed tool that we use to just spit out another letter and get it to them. And hopefully it's email via a signature program like Sign Now. But people are so damn busy today, getting back in touch with them. My number one rule, whether it's sales or acquisitions, don't freaking let them off the damn phone. You got them on the phone. You've got a verbal agreement. Just tell them, look, I can send you a formal contract, but what's going to happen is the title company is going to redo all the paperwork anyway, assuming you're closing through a title company. And if you're doing a direct close, tell them, when we send you all the closing packet, you'll have the official paperwork with the deed. Okay. But all we need to get the deal going is for you to scratch out the other price, write in the price we agreed to, and initial it, and then put your signature below, take a picture and text it to us. So now, you've got that deal. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I believe, especially today, is very, very important. Get the damn thing signed. Hey, even if, you took a live call and, you still need to look at the property a little bit more. You're not sure that might be overpaying, so what? Get it under contract for the higher price or for whatever you guys agreed to. And then if during the due diligence, you realize you got to reduce your offer, well, then go back and reduce your offer. You still have a better chance of getting the property doing it that way than saying, well, let me go in detail and come back and everything. Time kills deals. Get it wrapped up. And if it's too high, come back to them after you've had time to,
One of my favorite book titles was business book titles was from the 1990s. It was written by Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel. And the title of the book was Only the Paranoid Survive.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, our business has gotten more competitive than it certainly was when we started. And Dave's right. I mean, in the time between when you get off the phone and send them the revised purchase agreement, they might get 3 more letters at a higher price and decide to go in a different direction. You got to strike while the iron's hot. Strike while the iron is hot, because only the paranoid survive.
Exactly.
So, all right, we got to wrap this thing up. Yep. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was automation. Automation is an integral part of a process. In fact, your automation tools should be a representation of your process. If you have one process and your tools have a different process, you're going to have a very poorly functioning business. So when you look at tools, your tools the best tools are the ones that are going to be flexible enough to adapt to changing processes. Because if you are doing Kaizen, if you're constantly improving, then you're going to be making tweaks to your process. And wouldn't it be nice if you had a tool that can adjust along with you? It's really kind of essential. Otherwise, your tool becomes a straitjacket for you and actually holds you back rather than helping you. And the other thing that a tool should do, it should be able to automate tasks so that when you say, okay, when I hit this point in a process, it creates a trigger, which is going to send a task to this particular person whose job it is to do this. Well, rather than you have to task them, wouldn't it be nice if systems did that for you so that the entire process was functioning in a fairly automated fashion, even when parts of that process are manual and done by other people? If you've got tools that can do that, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah. And, there's, let's just, before we hang up, let's just talk about a high level on some of the specifics, not everything, because it would go too deep, but that where we need, where automation really helps us. Certainly, like you talked about, you have a tool. Let's just say, we're in the acquisitions, we're in the intake process. We bring a property in and we need to, we mark it responded, and we're going to do a little bit of pre-due diligence, look at the comps and things like that, and the access and whatnot before we call the seller up and do the negotiation. But, we have, in each step of the process, there's sort of an if this then that statement, right? This thing happens, okay, you take this action. Now, it moves to the next step, and the system automatically creates a task. And hey, if you're still a solopreneur, you have the task assigned to you. Great. But you don't have to remember to assign yourself. You move this stage, it assigns you a task. And then when you're bigger, it assigns it to whoever you delegate it to. So you've got auto task assignment. You've got, calendars. You want to be able to have, notifications and email reminders so that you don't lose track of things. Then on the marketing and sales side, you've got to have a way to automatically capture leads when people inquire from your ads. And it's really nice if you have that lead not just captured so you can do a manual follow-up, but captured so that it can automatically spit out an email confirmation that says, hey, we received your inquiry, somebody will be with you, blah, blah, blah. And also that when that comes in, it triggers a task for yourself or your salesperson to vet that lead and follow up on that lead accordingly. So there's all kinds of automation in those ways that can save you an absolute ton of time. And we'll get into some details on automation in another podcast. I would like to actually come back off of this one and actually maybe talk about the whole process map in the business and how we fit in where stuff gets outsourced and where stuff gets automated. I think that would be a great podcast.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered as much as we probably could and should on this one. So, Dave, that was fascinating. I love process. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak to you.
Absolutely. Everybody have a great day and go sell some land.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about Land.MBA, visit our website at, wait for it, Land.MBA. See you next time on the Land.MBA podcast.